Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me? Hi, hi. Spinner, how are you? Let me post a notice on Discord first. Okay, today we are going to do some basic watercolor demo, and then maybe if we have time we will do a monochrome study. Before I start, let me just tape this. And if you have any questions, feel free to write that in the comments or in the chat, actually in the chat here. Oops, what am I doing? Okay. Okay, making this into a full screen so I know what's going on here. Masking tape. Oops. Hello, Tom Hong, how are you doing? And thank you for checking in. We are just about to start. I will try to do some simple demo on a few basic watercolor techniques first, and then if you guys have any questions, you can type that in chat. Hey Vicky, welcome in. So what I'm trying to do here is just to use the masking tape to take the paper down. Okay, so if you use the watercolor in a palette like this, you always need to reactivate the watercolor first. I actually have a small cheat sheet here that I wrote down. So basically there are 3 types of wash that is really basic: the flat wash, the graded wash, and the variegated wash with more than one color. So I'm going to do some demos here. First off, we'll do the most basic flat wash. Okay, hold on. I'm reusing my tape so you can see there are colors on it. The paper that I am using is the cold press paper, 300-gram cold press by Baohong. Baohong is the Chinese brand. It's a pretty good paper actually. So for flat wash, I will just mix some color here. Start with some water. Are you able to see the palette, right? And what color should we use? We'll use this Indian red. When mixing the flat wash, it depends on how large the area that you need to paint. Then you should mix enough. You should mix enough wash. Because if you paint halfway and then you run out of the colors, then you get into trouble. You might not be able to mix the paint with the same consistency. So you can roughly estimate like how much water do you need. How much paint do you need for mixing for painting that area. And my this board is actually put on this handmade thing. Purpose is to make it so that the paper is on a certain angle, so you can see that the paint here are flowing down, and as you paint, the paint will also flow down. So I will just pick up a lot of the paint, and then from the top you can easily fill in the area. You can see like there are more paints over here, right? Before these dried, you are safe. Like you won't create any watermark. But once this part they dried up, then you cannot. Then they will make up some of the watermark there. So this is actually important. These they call it beads. These water beads to keep the area alive, basically. So really easy, right? You just have to keep adding more paints and then keep painting over. Then you get a really like fairly flat wash over here. You see that there might be too much paint at the bottom. Then what you can do is to clean the brush, and then you need a paper towel to clean off your brush, and then you can just pick up this excess water. If there are too much water on your brush, when you do this, then you will actually add water to the painted area, and that will create a background effect. So this is a really simple flat wash. Am I explaining it clearly enough? Not too sure. Well, one other thing is when you keep painting like this, right? Try not to go back to the area that you have already painted, because that might create some effects that you don't want. So usually, if you can finish one area with the least number of strokes, then try not to go back to it. Yeah, Vicky, I think we do need one tutorial video on YouTube so that we can just refer people to that video. So thank you guys for joining me. The second one is the graded wash. So you see we don't have enough paints here, so let's mix more paints. Oops. And for graded wash it's actually quite useful in a lot of cases. Also, when painting, like try not to push down the brush too much. I'm not sure if you can see that. Like usually just use the first part of the brush for painting, but if you push down too much, right, that would create another effect. You might actually pick up the paints from the paper instead. Also, what I'm doing here is painting wet paint on dry paper, so I didn't wet this paper at all. Another way to do the flat brush, maybe I should try to demonstrate that first. So another way to do the flat wash is to paint on a wet paper. You can still do it, so by wetting the paper first, or the area that you would like to paint, because watercolor, like the color only will run to the area with water, right? So I just wet this whole area with water, and then now I could actually use even stronger paints. Basically doing the same thing. Try not to go back. I will try to do this again because this is a really effective way of painting with watercolor. And you can easily add in some colors to it to make it interesting. But when you add more colors to it, you need to mix the paints with a more concentrated consistency. Excuse me. So, what are the good size to get for brushes for a beginner on a low budget? It depends on how large the paper, the artwork that you would like to paint. For this is a A4 size paper. I think a number 6, a round brush, would be enough. Right, this is a round brush of number 6 for most of the work, but for the wash you might need to get a mop brush, or you might need to get you could actually use Chinese brush. This is a Chinese brush, but it can hold a lot of water, so you can wet the whole area with water really fast. Problem with watercolor is, like you said, is the control of water, and if you use a smaller brush to paint on a big area, sometimes you don't have enough time to work on it before the paper get dried. And when the paper is like half dried, half wet and half dry, it is the most dangerous time to paint. You easily create some effects that you don't like. So here I'll just again pick up this excess water. So both of these are flat wash, but one is using the wet on dry method, and then this side is wet on wet. Now I'm going to do a graded wash here using wet on dried. So graded wash means that you have darker shades on top, and then it gradually dilute, right? So after painting like this much, then I will add a bit more water to the wash, and then keep pulling these beads down, but don't touch the earlier area. Okay, and then wash your brush again. Get some clean water to dilute it further. Repeat it again. Wash the brush and then get some clean water to further dilute the wash. Then to fill this part. So you get the gradation of the wash. And this is really useful like when you are painting the background for the skies and a lot of the landscapes. Actually, the price for the brushes, it depends on what type of hair that they are making of. Um, you could, the cheapest one would be these nylon hair brush, and but the problem with nylon hair is they don't hold that much of water, so you cannot hold that much paint. You might have to keep dipping into the paints. But for like these natural hair brushes, they can hold a whole lot of water, and they are really really different. Once you have a try that those natural hairbrush, for myself, I can't really go back to using the nylon one. This brand called 祝雨檀, 祝 for bamboo, 雨 for feather, 檀 means how do I explain 檀? 祝雨檀. It is a pretty good brand you can find on Taobao and probably Lazada. I am not too sure, but if you're in Singapore, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to get this from Taobao. So their brushes are made of this is their Hongpanzi series. These are all natural hair, so they can hold a whole lot of water. Right. But they can also come to a really sharp point, so you can do all the details with it, but you can also do the wash with it. I don't know if you can find them in a shop, but I got them from Taobao. There's a art store. What is it called? Street? It's near Bugis. It's near the chicken rice place. Near the Raffles Hotel. Is it Raffles Hotel? Oh my god. I got this from them. This is also a pretty good brush. It is a Russian brand, and they are all natural hair too. This is a number 6 brush, a round brush, and it is really good for watercolor as well. And they are not like, this one is not as expensive as the bigger brands like Da Vinci or others. So you can try to look for that. You know which one I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So this is the graded wash using one color, and then like I'll show you the variegated wash using 2 colors. So which 2 color? I think we'll use the blue. This is French ultramarine. It's a beautiful blue color. Yeah, that art store, they hold they have a lot of materials that you can find, and you can ask the owner. They're pretty friendly, and they will be able to explain it to you or introduce some materials to you. So it's similar. You have to mix enough paint, and then from the top. Now I need to mix this color with similar consistency. So I will continue this wash, but with a different color. You can change it to blue again. So these are really useful techniques, especially when you're doing background wash. The same principle applies. Like you have to mix enough paints when doing wash, basically, and also avoid getting back to the area after you paint. Um, this is almost like wet onto wet paper method as well, because you see the blue color, right? After I paint it, it is wet, and then I'm adding the brown color to it, which is also wet, and then they will mix naturally on the paper. And this is some sort of the watercolor effect that you will get, which is really nice, I think, because you just let them do their own work there. So basically, these three types of wash are the most basic wash that you will need to use in a lot of paintings. And what I would do here is maybe I can give you an example of how to paint this into a small landscape. No. I think I'll do the what should I do now? I'll do the layering again, but you can see how using just the flat wash, you'll be able to paint something really easily. So here, the most classic example is probably a box, so I'll just draw a box first. And pretending that light is going this way. So we'll continue to use the brown color. So I will start from a really light wash, and then we will continue to use stronger colors. You see this area that there's a beads over here, so before this one dried up, I can continue the wash. Basically, that's the idea. So I just wanna leave this top part because the light would be shining up there, and then this top part would be the part with the lightest color, and then just pull the color down. This way, you see, I finished painting first wash area, and it's all using the flat wash technique, using wet paint on dry paper, so it's wet on dry technique. Hey Taja, hello. How are you doing? Welcome. I'm trying to do a simple watercolor wash technique tutorial. Before you can put in the second layer for this one, you have to let it dry. So what I will do here is I'll try to show you how you can paint like a sky, space maybe, with by mixing in a lot of colors, using different colors. I will wet this area first. And starting with the lightest color, I think I'll use some yellow. Maybe I'll add in some orange. You see, I just picked directly from the palette here and just drop in and like move this down a little bit. Let it just run by itself because the whole area is wet, so I'm painting with the wet onto wet method. And now I will drop in some blue color. I want the outside to be darker, but inside it will just mix naturally. So I just pick up the paint and just drop it in. And some even darker blues. So I'm picking up some indigo here. You have to keep checking if how fast the paper is drying up, like, and also when mixing in the other colors, it has to be more concentrated to. Otherwise, you'll get a water blooming effect. But sometimes the water blooming effect could be interesting. Maybe I'll add in a bit. Like, I'll show you how this works. So I'm dropping some yellows onto the blue colors, and you can see that it's pushing the colors away. I'm trying to pick up the excess colors at the border, or just making this side like a box, and just keeping this hard edge on that side. Maybe I will use a clean brush to just soften these edges a little bit. So they look a bit more natural. Yeah, so you can create this sort of a dark sky universe effect. Could actually go darker. Have some darker colors. More black than blue around the edge. And I think doing this sort of wash is a good exercise to help you become familiar with the paint. So you can touch the paper and feel that how dry it is. It is light. It's not completely dry yet. Like this area is still slightly moist, but I think it's all right. And we'll now try to paint in a second layer. So I will only paint this square. Looks like it's... And the shadow, don't forget the shadow. Or maybe I'll make it onto, like on a table. So I'll paint this whole thing. So this is the second layer of the wash. And you see how 3D this shape looks already. And when you are doing some pictures of the when you're trying to paint like architectures, houses, they're basically the same like this. Like when you have drawn a house, where should I draw it? Like a simple house, right? It has the same idea. You can apply the same idea like this. You just have to decide where is the lights coming from. If it's coming from this side, then where the shadow should be. This might be the lightest part, and then this would be darker because it's under the roof. So you can use the same method with just a few layers to get to make it into a 3D shape. Keep the clean border. Yeah, we'll talk about the edges in a little bit. The edges is how strong the border is. Like you can see here, this color, this shape here, and the background here has a really sharp border, right? But here, look at this wash. Like the colors between the wash is not clear. Also, on this one, this side is all clean edges, like hard edges. But this side, I have diluted with water, so it became a much softer edges here. And in your painting, you would need both some area to have a hard edges and some area to have the soft edges. So it's a combination of all. Like in the more focused area, then you probably want some really strong contrast, and you would like to have some sharp edges around them to make the subject pop. And then maybe at the background, you would need a lot of the soft edges to make it like fading away, fading out. Hello, Madanki. Hello, how are you? Welcome in, welcome in. I think we still need some time for this to dry it up. But I think that we can take out the tapes for the upper part already. Also, Tong, I think in my videos, you can find links to a lot of the art materials that I use, so that you could use that as a reference. Hey, Spina. Maybe I should write that down so that I can remember which one is which. I am trying to make a tutorial. You can play back because I think we need a really basic tutorial so that I can refer people to the video when they ask me about it. Basically, I just talk about and demo how to do a very simple basic wash technique in watercolors. Okay, so this is a flat wash. Actually, both of these are flat wash. Where should I write it? Flat wash. My handwriting. But this one I paint with wet on dry. So I'm painting on dry paper, and this one I have wet the paper first. So this one is wet on wet. Masking tapes are so nice when you are able to get the clean edges. And then this one is the gradient wash. Graded wash. So it's darker on top and lighter at the bottom, but you can easily use it the other way. I start from the top to the bottom, and then as I go, I just keep adding a little bit of water to dilute it down. And this one is also wet on dry. And then this one is the Variegated Wash. Using more than one colors that you mix more than one color in the wash. The trick is this one is actually wet on wet, I would say, but not completely. Is it wet on wet? I would say it is wet on wet. So I start with the blue color, and then I use a different color to continue the wash. So if you don't want the color to have like background effect, then you have to make sure that the two colors are of similar consistency. So if the second color or the brown color here is a lot more dilute, then you would get a different effect. You can actually try it out. And these both of these two type of washes are really useful in doing landscape backgrounds. Actually, this one is more like wet on dry. I couldn't decide. I think this is wet on dry, and then this one is really wet on wet because again, when I paint, I mean for this one, when I paint on it, I was painting on a dry paper. All right. This one is a little bit similar to the how to paint a planet watercolor tutorial that I have on YouTube. Basically, I wet the area first with water and then drop in the colors from light to dark. So this is completely wet on wet. And there are some areas that you see that the colors are pushing out, and that's because it has more water in the color than the underlying layer, than the background. So it will end up pushing the colors out. It could be an interesting effect. Say you paint a really dark background, and when it's like half dry, you can spray some water over, clean water, to push some of the colors away, and then you could get some interesting background texture. Okay, I think we are about time to continue on that one. And this one is using flat wash, and then using the layering, or you can, I think you can call it like glazing as well. So you paint it one layer after another, but make sure that the color is dried after before you paint the second layer. Also, the layer, like the second layer is more concentrated than the first layer. I mean the concentration or the consistency of the paints. Now I'm going to paint in another layer. Just the side of the cube and the shadow. So that you can see how this is popping out again. And after it dry, I think I will have the one last layer to just paint in the shadow area. The cube. So here are the really basic wash techniques. And do you guys have any questions so far? Or am I explaining it clearly enough? I'll show you the monochrome study that I did. Those on Twitch has already seen it. So here is a monochrome study of using the same color. This is indigo, and you could dilute it into different shades. And you can paint a landscape painting easily by using just one single color with different tones, with different shades. So this is one really useful exercise if you are not familiar with washes, or if you just want to practice your wash. Actually, here I will point out, like, there are the different techniques that we are using in this one, even though it looks really simple. For the background wash, I first lay a clear water first, and then I drop in the lightest wash. So this is the really light background. Maybe I should put it here. And then this is the second layer. When the first layer is still wet, I use a slightly darker tone to paint in this background, like misty feel, or the trees or the hills. It could be anything, basically. But it creates a second background layer here that will help you to make this painting seems to have more depth in it. So after this first layer dried completely, basically, then I mix a much stronger mix of the paints for the middle layer of this mountain. And Actually, I was trying to create a sort of a gradient wash here, but it's not very clear. But at the bottom of the mountain, I'm using clean water to soften the edges, as you can see here. So it looks like there's mist here, so it's not clean edges like the one on top, like these mountain range. These are the hard edges, but for those at the bottom, I soften it, and then after like this second layer is dried, then I use the strongest color to paint in the front area, which is the foreground, and also the Buddha. Misty horizon leaves something for the imagination. Exactly, yeah. Um, I didn't paint in these far mountains initially, but then I feel like it's too blank over here, so I just use a lighter wash to just add another layer of the mountain here. If you have planned better, you might be able to like create 3 to 4 layers for the background to help to bring the depth to be more obvious. Even for the front, the foreground, even within the darker shade, right? You can go a lot darker too, because watercolor tend to dry lighter, and that's what you need to keep in mind when you are painting in the wash as well. So I just have to go in with the paints directly from the palette without mixing any water at all to add these darker details to it. And this will also add another light layer effect to the painting. So it's a I think it's a pretty good exercise, and you are able to get a really quite a nice painting from it pretty easily. So you can give this a try. Another one that I have done is this one. For this one, I use a similar color. Is it the same as this one? Might not be the same. I think this one might be burnt sienna actually from M. Graham, and this one is the Indian red from Winsor and Newton. So the idea is basically the same. So by painting from light to dark, from the furthest part to the nearer part, uh, from the bigger area to the smaller area. So for the first area is really just the background wash, and then the second area I basically cover most of the painting. It's almost like painting with this cube here. And then the third layer, then I just go in with another shade of the to paint in the shadow. So it's not as difficult as you thought, really. The idea and the theory is really the same as this little box that we are working on here now. It just has a lot more um, detail in it, but it's basically just a box here. But there are some details within it. Yes, you can definitely try it. Color would be too difficult to talk about for beginners, I think. For beginners, I think it is more important to focus on the values, the tone. And once you get the values right, you will you'll be able to paint a pretty realistic painting. Like if you are using photos as a reference, one way to check whether your value is right is to simply use your phone's function to turn it into black and white, and maybe even increase the contrast that way. That way you can see where is the darkest dot. where is the darkest shadow, and then where are the lighter part. This will help you to decide what are the values. So I think we can finish off this box after such a long talk. Tohong, it really needs practice, because like every other things, right? You get better when you practice more. When you are able to get more familiar with the materials that you are using, you will be better as well. When you have more practice, when you have painted the same scenes over and over again for many times, then you will definitely get better. Now I just paint in the shadow part, and yeah, you can see how this is popping out. If you don't like, if you think like the white is too white, for the first wash you can actually cover the whole thing. Or I'm wondering if I should just add an even lighter wash here, like just a really light color. When the area is not dry, and you are painting next to it, you have to be careful that the two colors don't mix together, or the lighter wash will run into the wash with more water will run into the other one. So just lightly, really light, to make it look less white, and I think that looks better. Taja, yes. If you are doing architectural drawings, then you have to study the perspective and make sure that the proportion and perspective are correct. Once you have the drawing as the backbone, as the structure, then you can go on and paint it. So for architecture and street scenes, then you would have to be more careful about the proportions and perspective, because once you get the building, if you get the building's perspective wrong, it is so easy to notice, right? But if you're doing landscapes like mountains and trees, then it could be more free in some sense. It could be less like you can always change the shapes of the mountain, things like that. What else do I need to say? Okay, I think I can talk a little bit about the paint consistency, which is similar to like similar to this 5 tones, or the different tones of the same color. You can try to look it up on internet. There's a urban sketcher from Canada. I think his name is Mark Holmes. He talked about paint consistency of tea, milk, and honey. Basically, you can just imagine like how dilute your paints needs to be. Like this one would be more like tea or milk, probably more milk. As long as you have an idea of where the paints that you mix lands on this sort of gradient scales, then you will have a better idea when you are painting on the paper. So you can go look that up, the tea, milk, and honey wash theory. It's actually based on a more complicated one by Joseph Zbukvic. How do I say his name? Joseph. I'll type his name here. Let me type it here. Wash. Like Watercolor Clock Theory by Joseph Zbukvic. Oh my gosh, I don't know how to. I don't think I spell it correctly. He's a really famous watercolor artist. I think most of you have seen his work, but he has a book on about watercolor, which is quite advanced actually. But he mentioned about this. He proposed this watercolor clock idea. Basically, I think it's something like this. So one side of the clock is about paper, and then the other side is the brush, and like there are so right. Let me think. So one side is the wetness of the paper, how wet is, or from very wet to dry. In the middle might be moist, and then the other side is also the paint consistency, whether it is tea, coffee, milk, where's the other one? Cream and butter. He used a different name, but the idea is like that. So this is how thick the paint is, right? And then you also have to consider how wet your paper is. So like we have done here, this is on dry paper, this is on wet paper, and the effect would be completely different. So these are the things that you have to consider when you are painting. You can read that up. I think it's too complicated to explain it online, but yeah. Hey Jules, welcome in. Do you use expensive brushes and colors? I'll show you the colors. I do use artist grade color because they do make a big difference if you have tried them, and they are actually worth buying compared to the student grade, because the colors that you can get is completely different. It would be a lot less chalky. The price of the color actually is proportional to how much pigment they have in the tube. And I mainly use Holbein, the Japanese brand. I also got some M-gram when they are on sales. So these are the two main brands that I am using right now. I also have a few tubes of Winsor & Newton. I have both their artist grade and the Coleman student grade. Coleman is not too bad actually. Like I have two colors here that are Coleman. This permanent rose color and one of the blue colors here. I just have to refill my colors. I'm running out of my colors. I think I have the materials list on most of my YouTube video as well. If you check the description of one of the video, you should be able to see all the links there as well. So the other thing that I can show you is all these color swatches that I have done, and you can see that what I mean by paper the difference between using different paper and colors. But I don't really have the student grade colors now. I found it quite frustrating to use the student grade colors because you will need to use a lot of the colors to get enough concentration for the paints. As in most of the student grade colors, they put in a lot of fillers. Those are not really pigments. They might be binders or fillers. But for artist grade, just a little bit of color, you can get a little bit of color can go a long way. I should say this. Okay, I'll get to that after I talk about all this paper first. Let's talk about paper. So this one is the paper that I'm using right now. This is a Baohong rough paper. So you can let me see if you can see clearer. There's a delay on the video, so I don't really know what I'm showing you. Hold on a second. I need to pull out my OBS. Oh, all right. So this is Baohong paper, and it has a really rough surface. But for me, I do want this surface, especially if I paint landscapes and architecture a lot. If you do some illustration type, you might want to get the hot press instead, which will have a much smoother surface. And this is arches. Using the same color. This is Holbein and this is M. Graham. And you can see the colors on arches. It is just so nice. I don't know if you can tell. Yeah, the way that the colors react on the paper is just, I have to agree, arches is the best paper. I think Saunders are also not bad. Saunders. Alright, okay, this is also arches. And you can see how well the colors could mix together. And they are also bright with just a little bit of the colors, really. And this is Coleman. You see the difference. Coleman isn't too bad, but if you compare to the artist grade, what paper is this? I think it also has to do with the paper. This one is the cheaper paper as well. So, like the colors didn't really mix that well on paper. You can see patches here and there as well. But for arches and Saunders, it's much easier to do, just to let them mix on paper and still looks really nice. That's another student grade. And you can see how, like, I'm using the same color. This is a aqua fine paper. It's not too bad actually. The colors are all looking quite nice, like still quite bright and everything. But it does feel different when you paint on this aqua fine paper and compared to even Baohong. But I think even Baohong is better than it. And its arches would be really the best to paint on. So I do a lot of these color swatches because for every paper, even if you are using the same color, they could perform slightly differently. Like this one should be the same as that one. It's just brighter on the arches paper as well. Like all the subtleties in it. So if I am using a new paper, I would always do a swatch and just to look how it performs. It also gives you a feel of how it would feel like when you paint on it. So that's what I would recommend you doing if you are just starting out with the colors. That's another way to do the swatches. It's almost like the monochrome study, the color scales that I showed you earlier. Where's my paint over here? Oh, okay. This one is the Saunders. So Saunders is really good as well. So I love Saunders, and this one is not even 100, like 300 gram. It's only 190 gram, but it works really well. The only thing is that because it's a thinner paper, so it would buckle if you don't tape it down properly, or if you use too much water. But I think it's all right. It's not bad at all. So another option is to get the 190 gram if you don't really use that much wash. And this is a Saunders. Where is that monochrome? Okay, here. Like, that's another way to do the wash, which is similar to this scale. So I try to dilute each color down to 5 scales. It is a really good exercise because you have to really feel like how much water do you need to dilute it down, and being able to control it, like you can easily mix it with the right tone would help you when you are painting the painting. Okay, so what's the questions that I missed? What are the colors you should get if you would like to start simple? Yeah, that's a good question. Basic colors, you probably just need 6 colors. Two warm color, like a warm color and a cool color of each of the primary colors. So for yellow, blue, and red, you could get a warm color and a cool color version of each of those. So, example, like maybe I should type that down. Like usually, the lemon yellow is the cooler yellow, and the cadmium yellow, which I used up already. The cadmium yellow is a warmer yellow, so 2 yellow and 2 blues. This is French ultramarine, which is or cobalt blue, which is a warmer blue, and then you could have celurium or Persian blue as the cooler blue. And for red, it's the same. The crimson lake is a warmer red, and then cadmium red or even permanent rose, I think is also the cooler version of the red color. So basic colors are just 6 colors. You could add a earthy tone like a burnt sienna or a darker color like indigo. Then you would be probably set already. Well set. But it really depends on, like, there are too many colors to choose from, right? So yeah, but those are the really the basics. The 3 primaries, in one in warm and one in cold. And I think it would be better to get tubes and then that you could squeeze out than to just get those in the cubes. Because I think the fresh paints from the tubes are always brighter and nicer. Yep, that's the minimum. Once you get into it, that's the result. You want to try to try out different colors because there are just too many choices. And there are some brands like Daniel Smith, they make some really interesting colors. Like some colors has a really strong granulation effect, like the French ultramarine or this cobalt violet color. Let me show you a close up. You see the granulation effect, like in these cobalt colors. It's just sometimes like these are hard to replicate with other shades. Like there's a very pretty French ultramarine that I like. So, but if you just want two colors, right? You can always just get burnt sienna and French ultramarine because these two colors will mix a really dark, can mix a really dark color, but they can also, both of them can have a really large range as well. So you can paint, and one is warm and one is cold, so that you get a warm color and a cold color, and you can paint a lot of painting with just two colors and it will still look nice. Okay, refocus. Now let's try a simple landscape using the techniques that we have done. Actually, I like using this background, right? You can imagine that you can now just paint in the middle ground here and then add in another layer for the foreground, and then that will be one painting. Just three simple layers. Okay, now let me tape it down and Tong Hong, you asked how do you, why would you get some patches when you are doing the wash, right? This is probably because you let the beads dried up before you went in and continuing to paint, or the paints that you, or when you are painting, the paint consistency might have changed. You might have dropped in some water because you have to remember like there would be water on your brush as well. So there are water on the paper, there are water on your palettes, there are water on your brush. So to get a really nice flat wash, you have to just mix enough paint and paint it continuously. Don't let the beads dried out. Then you can continue to paint by adding like pulling down the beads and then to continue. Yeah. Or the other way that you could have those blooming effect is like in this example. When you add in a second color or the third layer, again the paint consistency is more dilute than your underlying paint, so it will just push the paint away. So if you go in with a more concentrated color, usually then you won't get those blooming or the bad runs effect. Sometimes people really like those blooming and back runs effect because they actually give you the watercolor feel, right? can try to paint like a sunset scene, maybe. I use up this blue here. I don't really clean my palettes, but I did clean it today. Otherwise, it's all too dirty to show on screen. So you see here, I'm mixing in the colors. I think the top could go even darker, so I'll mix a stronger blue and just paint in the darker shades. If you know, like you just want to do a really nice wash, sometimes wetting the whole paper with water would make it easier. And then now I'm just gonna dilute it. Dilute it with water to pull it down. And dropping in more color. I should have used a smaller paper. And doing this sort of watercolor wash, if your paper is not watercolor paper, that would be super hard to replicate the effect. I'm just picking up these excess water. Drinking some water. Alright, as we have to wait for it to dry, I think we can now talk about brush strokes. Maybe we can talk about brush strokes. So we talk about the wash, and I'll use the back of the paper. For brush strokes, right, there are different types of brush, and some is the flat brush and some is the round brush. I think the round brush for me is the most versatile one. And so higher grade colors probably help a lot with larger wet wash. Yeah, colors matters as well, because some, as I mentioned earlier, for student grade, they put in too much filler in it, or they don't have enough pigment. So when doing this kind of wash, the color might become really dilute. But for the artist grade, usually just a little bit of color, you can mix a really nice wash for a pretty large area already. But compare paper with paints, paper matters. Paper matters more than the paints. That's what I would say. maybe I should show you how it works on this paper. So this is the student gray, right? I'll show you that I try to do the same thing here. Too much color. It's actually not too bad. But the effect is different. I don't know if you can tell. Like comparing this one to that one. And I'm using the same type of paints, it's just the paper is different. It looks a lot more dilute too, but I might be able to add a little bit more. Yeah, and also this paper, you can't really go over it too many times. Compared to the 100% cotton paper, you might be able to do a light wash of 1 or 2 layers, but like arches, you can easily leave up the paints. You can really abuse the paper with the 100% cotton paper. So I think doing the washes, the paper matters more than the paints. Is it obvious? Like, this wash here is much nicer than this one. Okay. I was trying to talk about the brush strokes yet. So for brush strokes that you will probably use for details, and there could be points. Like you could use brush to make points, and you could also use it to draw lines. Some brush allows you to get really thin lines. Or you could sometimes like push it down to get a variety, like to get a different width of the lines. Like these are all really common ways of how you could use your brush on your painting. Of course, to fill in the area like I was showing you earlier, when I'll say it again, like when you are trying to fill up an area, don't push it down too much, because when you push it down, you see the colors actually became lighter because the brush will pick up the colors. So I would always try to just use the front part of it to just keep this bead alive and just keep on painting. And another way to use this brush is of course the dry brush effect. I don't know if I will be able to. Dry brush effect, you might have to hold it this way, like using the side of the brush. And if you have if you're using cold press paper, if you have textures on your paper, then by doing this, mix more color, you can get the fade by. You can get this dry brush effect, which is really nice to use. Like you can imagine this is the lake, and then this white part would be the reflections of the lights on the lakes. So these are a few simple ways to use your brush. You just remember your classes. Certainly the teacher was better at it anyway, but you're thinking your gear would be probably better. Might look into it. Oh, what gears? Your painting gears will be better than your your teachers. Also, Tohon, if you want to get some cheaper brush, you can try some Chinese calligraphy brush. Those good ones like that you use for Chinese calligraphy, um, those with goat hair, Yan Hao, they can absorb a lot of water, so those would be good for doing background washes. And then you could get a Jian Hao, which is a mixed hair brush, like with wolf hair or something like that. And then they would be good for the details, and you could use them like the round brush. Problem with the Chinese brush is sometimes it's really hard to guarantee the quality of the brush. As long as the brush doesn't have hairs coming off when you paint, and it can like hold a certain amount of water, a pretty good amount of water, and can come to a sharp point, I think it would be a good watercolor brush. Your teachers might have used better stuff and you might have to look into upgrading. Any particular brand to recommend? Oh, this one, 祝语坛. I'll write that down. I completely recommend this one. I love this brush, and it's a fraction of the Da Vinci brush. I'll write it here. Hold on a second. So this one is the 祝语坛 brush, and this series is the 红胖子. 胖子. I think it's the 红胖子 series. This one is about 30 Hong Kong dollars. But if you get a Da Vinci brush, this one is about 33 Hong Kong dollars, if I remember correctly. You see, this is larger, right? The Da Vinci brush. But not that large. This might be a number 4 for 祝语坛. I think this one is number 2. I'm not too sure. Number 1 or number 2. I think it is number 2 if I remember correctly. Like this one is like $30, but in US currency. But this is a really good brush by Da Vinci. It's my favorite brush though. But 祝语坛is so much more affordable. Yeah, so you can go look up for that. Also, you can get the 宝红纸, the 宝红 paper from Taobao, which is the paper that I've been using now, like this one here and here as well. These are all the 宝红 paper. I finished up all my Saunders and Arches paper already, and haven't restocked yet. What else do I need to say? Actually, there are some other techniques that you could try out with the wash, like the lifting techniques. I think I could demonstrate over here. Why they look so much bigger? Oh, when you are looking for brushes, right? Usually the size is the diameter of the brush. So because different brand, they have different size, and this one is, how much is this? 6, 7. This one is around 7 mm, 7 mm maybe, and this one is 4 or 5. This largest one from Hua Hong, this one is probably more than 10. Yeah, 11. I saw two kind on Bao Hong. Which kind? Academy. Yeah, the one that I'm using is Academy. They have a higher grade, which is oh, I can't remember which one is the higher grade, but I'm not using the higher grade. Yeah, so if you are looking for brushes, they should give you the size, like the length of the brush and also the diameter. Then you have to compare the diameter to see how big they are. Because every brand, like every different series, they use different size number. So this is number 6, but this is a number 3 for Wow mop brush. This one is number 2. I think both of these are number 2. So you see, it's super confusing when you use the number system. Okay, I can talk a little bit about lifting as well. So lifting is a effect, or I think I don't use them that often, but in some cases that might be useful. Like when you are painting a sky again, right? Just drop in the color. Like sometimes you can just let them run, and it's fun. Basically, it will only run to the part which is wet with water. So that's another way to control where you want the color to go. And for edges, I always take care of the edges as well. If you think the edges look too hard, you can go in with a drier brush to just slightly soften it out. And you see these beads here, right? If you don't pick up the water, after they form, after they dry, they will leave a mark over there. So just doing this. Lifting means that you remove some of the colors from the wash using different techniques, and the most common way is probably using tissue. Just slightly dab it over, and you could create those cloud effects. I rarely use this, so let's see. So like something like this. You see it's lighter over here. Letting color run less indifferent. Yeah, I really like to just let them drop and mix on their own. I think it's this sort of uncertainty, the happy accidents that you could get with the watercolor wash, which makes the watercolor painting looks different and looks attractive. I think I need to put in a darker wash so that the effect would be more obvious to you guys. So let me put in another wash here. This is indigo. It's a much darker blue color. And here, right? Let me put down another wash. I'll just put down another wash here. So apart from using tissue, before the paints dry, see, I can pick up more colors because the paper is still wet, right? Here the paper is pretty much dry already, you cannot pick it up, but you might be able to use a nylon brush, wet it a little bit, and kind of like scrap it. So this is already completely dried, which is the brush that I have a little small brush that I use for scraping it away. So this one has a really stiff brush, and that could be used to remove some colors. How much the color you could remove depends on the paper and the paints. Some paints are more staining than others. For those really staining colors, you won't be able to remove much. But for some transparent color, you could remove them like this. So you see, you could lift up the colors. That's how you can do it here. Oh, before it dried up here, so this is still sort of wet, right? You could also use a brush to just lift it up. Not very effective. Another tool that you could use is this sort of a credit card. I think this is too dried already. This one you have to experiment a little bit, like how dry it before you can scrap out the color. Not really scraping out too much. Okay, let's try it here. But I think this is still too wet to dry. But I'll try it and let you see the effect. So it's too wet. When you scrap it, then it will actually become a darker line. So this is way too wet. We'll try it again after it's dried a little bit. Yeah, so lifting, when you want to lift something off, right, you have to remember the timing. You have to remember, like, you have a certain area that you have to scrape it off before it completely dried, or before it became too dry to do the effect. All right, this is pretty much dry already, so let's continue to work on this. Okay, put this away first. I think I want to paint some clouds over the skies. So for the second layer, right, I'm mixing a slightly more concentrated paints, but not too concentrated. Like, it's still kind of watery, but it's more concentrated than the first layer. Good idea. Okay, let's see if this is a good time. Still not a good time. It's still kind of shiny. Maybe this side. Let's wait a little bit longer. I want to create some dramatic clouds over the skies. So this is using the brush strokes. in a more free way. I don't really I don't have a reference for this one, so I'm just painting freely. Or I could, even for the same wash, I could add some darker colors to a certain area. Just mixing a different color but more concentrate color. So when you drop in the colors, right, it won't create those blooming effect. So just for the underside, I wanna have a darker colors to it. It's still kind of wet. I don't really know when is a good time to scratch because I rarely use this technique. Okay, this is better. Like you see the effects here. Now this is the right time. So it's almost dry, but not completely dry yet. And this could be like trees in the forest. See, they dry up so fast now. Couldn't get this side to work because they already dry up, but you see the upper part is still a little bit wet, so I can still scrape it off. Yeah, all these techniques, you need to practice to be perfect. Another really interesting tools and handy one that you could use is how do you call these? Clean, like 保鲜纸. How do you call this? What's the name for this? Like you could use this to. I'll do another demo here. Ugh. Okay, let's put down the wash. Oh, this is such a nice color. This French ultramarine is just too pretty. Klingberg. Thank you. Yeah. What you need to do, let me just cut this off. Alright, okay. So you just put it on top. You could move it around. And just put it there and let it dry. Another effect, I don't have the salts around, but you get the idea. It's the same, like you put down the wash first and then you spray some table salt over it when it's half dry. Actually, you have to test out the effects yourself, like how long before you could put in the salt, because the effect would be different. Like so it would be better to test it out and maybe have a record somewhere so that you know like which effect you can get and how long do you need to wait before you put the salt on it. We'll pull this out after it dried up. But yeah, I think this cling wrap also creates a pretty interesting texture. So these are different ways that you can create the texture based on these this basic wash. All I did here are just a flat wash, but you can use this sort of wet on wet effect as the base and then use different techniques for the texture. Okay, I think I want to add some sort of a background mountain here. Really just painting from imagination. Don't even have a reference. Maybe I'll paint another one here with darker shades. As we get closer, right? Usually the things further back, they are in a lighter shade, and those in front, which is closer to us, they would look more clearer, and they would usually in a more stronger shade. When you are painting like the mountains or the trees, it's always nice to drop in some different colors before it dried up. But again, like when you drop in the colors, the concentration of the paints, you have to be careful. It cannot be more dilute than the underneath layer. Okay, I think I want to add a bit of the reflection for the mountain. So I'm mixing a lighter color and then just pull it down. Similar for this part. These clouds are looking funny because I don't have the reference. But you get the idea. So this is the second layer. Should I get like an even higher mountain here? Maybe I just have to add a stronger mountain here. So this one would be in front. And slightly darker colors near the part that for the water. Some lines to represent the water. Then I don't know what else to add. I'll add some birds here. Then there's a really simple landscapes. Basically, just using the techniques that we just talked about, a wash, and for the second and the third layer, a little bit of the brush strokes. We didn't even put in the textures. Okay, now let's take this off. And you can see it creates this sort of interesting effect. I'll give you a close up. Oops. Okay, is this... Okay. So I think it's the part that the cling wrap got pushed down. The colors get more concentrated. And also here's the scrapping effect. So you see this is when the underlying wash was still wet. When you scrap through it, it became a darker lines. But when it's about to dry, then you will be able to scrap out some colors. And this is using a nylon brush and using water to kind of like wash out the wash, and that would depends on the type of the color, whether it is a staining color, and to depend on how much you can wash it off. This is a closer look of the dry brush effect, that using the side of the brush to paint to just like catch the textures of the paper. And then these are some simple brush strokes that you would be able to use when you are adding the details. I think that's pretty much that I have to say about all the simple basic techniques. Do you guys have other questions? Whoa, it's 11:30 almost. Not too bad. I thought I would be only I will only be able to talk about it for maybe an hour, but we actually spend more than that. Let's take this off. It looks so much nicer with the border. So I think, yeah, these are really simple but useful, and some techniques that we actually always use. I can just show you my recent paintings, and you can see I'm using it all the time. Like, I always start with a background wash. Okay, maybe this one here. You see the background wash here. So it is a really flat wash, and then I'm mixing two colors. Before the wash dry, I drop in this shadow area, and then it will create these soft edges because the wash is the paper is still wet. And then just drop in colors for the shadow area, and then after everything is dry, then I can slowly work out the structure of the I can slowly work out the structure of the bolts and add some details. When you add some details, then you would be able to use all those brush strokes like points and lines, because every picture makes up of area, lines, and points, right? So you would be basically use these using these techniques, but on a different picture. You might want to work more on the part that is in focus. You could either use stronger contrast of the colors or like the tones to help to bring the focus out. Um, oh, okay, this one as well. Like this background wash is again by wetting the whole paper, then just dropping in the colors. I did it really lightly, and you can see there are some like whiter area because I also use some clean water to create that effect. Yeah, but when I paint it when they are all wet, and then the colors kind of like will mix on their own. So this is the background wash, and then after it dry, you start to slowly work on each flower. For each individual flower, you would vary the colors as well. So it's not the whole, it's not one color for one flower, but even for each petal, you have to observe where is the lighter part within that petal, or how the colors actually vary. So there might be more orange up there might be more yellow over there, and then it might be more red over here. So you try to vary the colors as well. And these are done done using the this method. You paint on paint on dry paper using wet paint, and then you let the paints mix on the paper. What else? Yeah, it's all about slowly adding in the layers and getting to all the details. All of these are similar techniques. So that's another shop house painting. Like you can see how I did you can guess how I did the background, right? Background sky it has more colors on top, and then it's lighter when it gets to the horizon line. For the house, just remember this box here. So this side is lighter, this side is darker, but I paint this side the last, right? So you also just paint layer by layer to slowly add in the details. It's basically the same, like the technique. Oh, okay, this one. It's easy, so you can try this one using this technique. Like wet the egg, drop in the colors. I only use two colors here, the permanent rose and the French ultramarine, and they mix a really nice warm purple color. When you are trying to mix the colors, right? If you mix too many colors, you will get a gray color, or it will look muddy. So you have to be careful then. Like don't mix in too many colors. I think 2 to 3 is the best, and you have to understand that the colors are like the properties of the color. Are they going to mix up and to give you a milk color or a gray color? So that's something to consider when you are doing wet on wet. So after it dries, just add in the details. So only 2 layers, and then finally I use the white paint. 3 layers to get this done. I think maybe next time we can talk about negative painting, which is a really useful technique that I use really often as well, especially when painting flowers. I think I have some videos on YouTube already about painting flowers and using the negative painting techniques. I don't know. Should we do it? I don't know. Alright. I think we are. That's about all for today. Any other questions? You can let me know, or leave it in the comment below, and then maybe I can try to answer next time. Thanks a lot, Madanki. And thank you guys for those who came to watch me from Twitch. Um, for those who are from YouTube, and you can click on my info, or I think the description of the channel. You can find a link to my Twitch account because I stream on Twitch 3 times a week. So I will be streaming there on Sunday, tomorrow night as well. For YouTube, I am not sure. I will probably schedule another YouTube stream on Saturday, but I will let you know if after I schedule the stream. If you have followed me on YouTube, you should be able to get the notice, right? The box is not working. How do I get the stream element bot to work here? Hey Vicky! Talking about technical stuff, I have actually tried to talk about it on Twitch, and sometimes when people ask me when I'm painting, I will stop and talk about it as well. But I think maybe it would be helpful to have one video just mainly talking about these simple techniques and talk a little bit about paints and paper. I know you are here the whole time. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining me today. I will schedule a stream again on YouTube. And I couldn't get the stream element bot to work. How do I make the bot work? What is the command? Doesn't work. But I did manage to get the overlay with stream elements, so I have no idea why. If anyone know, you could let me know. Alright, so have a good evening everyone. I have to sign off now. Take care everyone, have a great Sunday. I'll see you on Twitch tomorrow. Bye bye. 早唞. Good night. I have to stop it here. Okay, ending the stream now. Bye bye.